timely, insightful, discussion and analysis of economic trends and markets. From Southern California to Sacramento, featuring business and political leaders, unique field reports. From Orange County and the campus of Chapman University, this is the Chapman Business Report.
Welcome back to the Chapman Business Reports, our weekly look at business, financial markets, and a special focus on the regional economies, trends, and issues of Southern California, and a special show on this occasion. If you are in the media, if you are in politics, civically engaged, you probably know about an annual tradition in Southern California, the California Women's Conference. And you may even know about it if you're not in one of those walks of life, because it has been such a tradition. Started out being run, administered by the First Lady of the state, and now is being administered by the woman to my left, Michelle Patterson, who has brought it back, the California Women's Conference, the topic of this week's Chapman Business Report. Michelle, thank you very much for coming by.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And I mentioned it has been a tradition. Let's talk back first before we talk about why it took a year off and how you got involved and resuscitated it. But it all started under Governor Deukmejian and his wife, I guess.
Governor George Deukmejian, and 27 years ago, back in 1985, he started it.
And what was the impetus? And specifically, to say not the California, it was the California Women's Conference.
Yeah, it was the Governor's Conference, and they had some different names. We actually, in fact, I had breakfast this morning. I was at the Governor's house, and kind of full circle, but
so he can be one of your guest speakers in a few months.
He can, and his wife Gloria, tell you, she is pretty phenomenal herself. I mean, he attributes really getting that conference kicked off because it was an idea they had, and then Gloria came in and really launched it. But the whole purpose around the conference was to give women the tools and resources to be successful. At the time, businesses were failing, and they felt the need to go ahead and start this conference, and that's why it got going. So ironically enough, so when I was 13, my father, who worked for the Department of Justice, actually set up an interview for me with the newly elected governor, and I had a chance to meet with him. And so can you imagine, 13, and I'm interviewing him, and I'm asking him questions about
your school paper.
For the school paper, and tell me about your dog and your cat, and what's your favorite hobby. And I'm going on and asking him these, and he looks at me afterwards and he says, Michelle, he goes, that was the best interview I've ever had. So of course my face completely lit up, and at that time I started telling my friends, I'm going to be governor. I'm gonna run for office. So I was.
Well, did you also ask him if he's gonna grant clemency for so and so on death row, and what about taxes? And no wonder he loved that interview.
That was my next set of questions after the break.
Good, start soft. Well, you wait till where I go in a few minutes.
Well, and he said this morning, he goes, you'd be surprised, Michelle, some of these kids, they'll come up with like some really direct questions and ask me, and he goes, but no, he goes, and I got a really nice letter from him, and you've grown up to be this fine young woman. And
so it is fated that you would be the person who would bring back this conference that he as governor started.
27 years ago. I mean, my eyes were watering as I was talking to him, because I thought, it's definitely one of those full circle moments where you just feel like, very, very blessed to be a part of this. Very blessed.
There's a lot of, this is a 2-day conference. Some folks might, there's workshops, there's speakers, a big speakers bureau, and there are a lot of those things in this state and everywhere. But this one, it has developed quite the reputation, very respected. Why do you think that is?
You know what? I mean, there's every year the governor's office has added new elements. I mean, it's just amazing, and it continued to grow and develop into this extraordinary star-studded event. I mean, just truly.
Some people who have participated then in the past?
I mean, everything from the Dalai Lama to Oprah, which we've got Stedman. We haven't announced that. So I told you I'd let you in on the inside scoop. So Stedman is actually going to be at the conference. And I told him, I said, you know what? I said, Stedman, behind every, just phenomenal woman is a very secure man. And he says, absolutely. He talks about that too when he speaks.
In years past, and I know of course you hope this year, how many people have attended this conference?
It's 25,000, so it varies. One of the things that we're really excited about is we had feedback that, it's an amazing conference, but it only lasts for 2 days. It'd be great if we can go ahead and have those resources and those tools available all year long. So what we've done is we actually have panel discussions that are happening now leading up to the conference. And there's a company called Splore that is brilliant. It's heavy in the medical industry, where you can go online and you can actually interact with the moderator, the panelists, so that when you get to the conference, you are not having the discussion for the very first time. You've been having this discussion online. So you get away from having to spend a lot of time with all the introductions. You're really into the meat of the conversation.
Every year it's a theme. This year's theme is Women's Economy Starts Here. By the way, we're talking about guests. Michelle mentioned Stedman. A little later on, Mark Victor Hansen will join us. You certainly know a series of his books, Chicken Soup for the Soul, and he'll be one of your speakers at the conference. But Women's Economy Starts Here. How'd you come up with that? What is that all about?
So we really looked at the Women's Economy Starts Here is really building out a community and pulling these resources together. And everything pointed back to whether it be Jobonomics with Chuck Vollmer and really job creation, to going ahead and working with Springboard, which did $5 billion in funding for women-owned businesses. We have it set up where we're doing what's called Dolphin Tank. So it's a play on words of like Shark Tank, but you can go online right now and post a 2-minute video and talk about your business and your idea.
So you can leave from this conference with money.
You can leave from this conference with more than money, with resources. You have the advice from the different VC groups and banks and leaders of today that really can help you navigate. And what's great too about the conference is it's not just focused on the entrepreneur. It has a spot for if you're in corporate America and you want to go ahead and climb that corporate ladder and develop that $1 million image, or if you want to get involved with, on the philanthropic side. This year, we've got 40 charities that are represented, and Susan G. Komen Foundation, they're doing the official run that happens on Sunday, September 23rd. And we've just got these amazing organizations that are out there and really getting the word out. And it ends up being a fundraiser for them as well.
Sure. Women's economy, a focus especially on women entrepreneurs. News to me, 2 out of every 3 new entrepreneurs, new businesses in California started by women, and that's also your background.
It is. And what's interesting too, you look at the statistics right now, women represent 78% of the consumer, 85% of the decision maker in the household. So for men, look at your own, home. I was picking out a suit for my husband the other day, and I thought, oh, well, I like these stripes, and I think this looks good. And so that's what's happening, is that women are really driving the economy, which again goes right back into what we talked about, and that's the Women's Economy Starts Here.
So this conference in years past has been headed up, administered, however you want to put it. I guess what your title would be, President of the Women's Conference?
Executive Director.
By the First Lady of the State. Pete Wilson's Gail Wilson, was Maria Shriver, but not this time around. How did you get involved?
You know what, we had several calls. There's just a small handful of women that produce events. There's a lot of event planners and organizers, but when it comes to actually... This is a big event.
By the way, Long Beach Convention Center, September 23rd and 24th, the dates for this year's, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and a good question. So my background has been putting on events for 30,000 people and being able to go ahead and really produce large-scale events, definitely with a concert theme to it. And so I had worked with Patricia Pat Bates, Orange County Supervisor, who's been a mentor of mine, and her comment to me was, this is perfect for you. This conference should not go away. You really need to look at this, because we skipped a year. And Maria Shriver, was the First Lady, and when Arnold came out of office, then went to the new First Lady, and she had decided that she was going to focus on other areas. And so we skipped a year, and I can't say enough about how exciting it's been to work with just Southern California as a whole. Talk about people coming out of their way and organizations coming out of their way to make sure that this event is successful. Long Beach, I've just had such a phenomenal time working with the convention center. Nancy Foster, who's the First Lady of Long Beach. They're remarkable people. So it's been a real joy.
Let me ask you about a couple of years ago. This is obviously, it runs out of the governor's office, and at times the governor will be a Democrat, the governor will be a Republican. But it's a nonpartisan conference. Now, a couple of years back, as we know, there was an event where I guess it was not a debate, but a conversation, and the governor himself was hosting it. And there was an issue where the subject of negative ads came up, and Meg Whitman, and Jerry Brown were asked would they continue negative ads. Meg Whitman got booed. Did that play any role in this conference, taking a year off, that left maybe a bad taste in folks' mouths to say, hey, this conference shouldn't have to do with politics?
I don't know if directly. I do know that, people literally got out of their seats and walked out. It was, again, it's a nonpartisan event. There's so many issues that are out there for us to discuss and for us to talk about. We are coming up on an election year.
Right.
This is, now.
Will there be any panels, anything?
We do have a panel for women in legislation. We've got some phenomenal individuals that have, definitely played a role in our legislation. But also too is that their civic duty. We've got Tippi Hedren, who's, again, they play a role and they've got a platform as an actor, but then they take that. Yes. So there's just some things of that nature that happen, but it's really designed to talk about the issues, what are the issues, make sure that people are educated, but it's not an opportunity for it to be a political battle.
Of the folks who attend, you say thousands have already signed up. You're hoping for, I guess, tens of thousands, right? As in years past.
And we've got all our online streaming that's set up, so that's going to be exciting. We actually are online streaming with China this year. So we've got an organization that's out there. DC Cordova is putting on Money in You, and she'll be doing that this year. So that's really exciting. And we've, again, with these panel discussions, we've got 5,000 writers right now that are directly working on getting the messaging out on the conference. So
and it won't be all women attending, of course.
You know what? And I get asked this all the time.
Guys want to hear what Mark has to say, right?
We all want to hear what Mark has to say. And Mark's got some great information. We're thrilled to have him as a speaker, as well as other men, too, that we have participating. But the comment comes up is, Michelle, can men go? We love men. We want men there. We really look at this as it's really about putting together a community. And it's not so much with women or with men, but what can we do to be able to give back to the community and put back into the community? And I will tell you, we're pretty excited because the way that we've structured the conference, when you enter in, we've set it up as a city. And so in the center, we've got this magnificent stage. And I'll give you another clue. We haven't announced it yet, but we've got Helen Reddy, who will be singing, and you guys know her from singing I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar. So that song we're thrilled to have her participate, along with just some other phenomenal.
Somewhat of I guess, the title's Women's Economy, but I see a retro theme because you're also going to have a reunion of the Waltons, is that right?
Yes.
For 40 years.
40th year, and the Magic Castles.
I have young people, former students that are shooting the show, that are crew, they have no clue. This was the number one show. John Boy.
So exactly. But yeah, so when you go into the conference, there's an oak tree that's in the center, and the oak tree is a physical oak tree that turns into an avatar that's then projected up onto the ceiling. And what that is everybody's given ribbons and a QR code, and they're able to put down what their dream is, what their quote is, and that then in turn populates the tree, and then that gets housed on the website.
I know it's a few months out, but you seem very calm. There's a few details involved in putting
just
on
a couple. I got to tell you, so there's a couple things. If you talk to me, it used to be if you talk to me for more than 17 minutes, you're signed up for a couple committees. And then now I think I'm down to like 6 minutes. So I can break out my laundry list of like, okay, let me see where I can sign you up for. So
very good. You could be, there's an old saying about our great university president here, Jim Doty. If you rode the elevator down 3 floors, he leaves with a check.
He leaves with a check. Well, you see him riding the elevator all the time then?
So don't ride an elevator. Don't spend 6 minutes with Michelle Patterson. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a little break and be joined by one of her guests, Mark Victor Hansen, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. When we get back, talking about the California Women's Conference on the Chapman Business Report. Stay with us. And we are back on the Chapman Business Report. Pete Weitzner joined by Mark Victor Hansen, who's joining us now as one of the speakers at the upcoming California Women's Conference, which is the subject of our show, as it has been resuscitated and brought back what will be for its 27th year, Michelle Patterson?
27 years.
In Long Beach on the 23rd and 24th at the Convention Center. Mark, how did you wind up on the speaker list? And of course, a lot of folks familiar with Mark's books. How many hundred million?
500 million, half billion.
Only.
We've sold the most books ever. And my goal was $1 billion. And when we got rejected by 144 publishers, everyone was saying, "Are you nuts? This isn't going to work." And I said, "Well, I'll sell $1.5 million in a year and a half." We did, and then 5, and then 10, and I believe and teach. You've got to have high, lofty, inspired goals, and then you won't attain them. You'll transcend them.
The latest edition of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books is Messages from Heaven. How will you relate, I don't know if you specifically relate the messages in these books you've written out most recently, you wrote, what is it, The Instant Millionaire. What will be your message to this conference?
It's 1 Minute Millionaire. It is millionaire, somebody else. But I'm a friend and he's a student,
really?
So I'm all for it. God bless those of us, because we're trying to get the economy going again. So let me just give you an example. We have a lady that had nothing going right. She was pregnant. She was eating garbage out of the back of McDonald's in Ohio. She was going into McDonald's and bathing, and she thought she was worthless. She had no family and no boyfriend that would sustain her. So she says, "Oh my God, I'm freezing, and I got goosebumps, my goosebumps. I don't know what I'm going to do." Sees the library, and she can read, which is like a really good thing. I'm very keen on literacy because my parents were illiterate Danish people. So she goes in the library, and the book is, one of our books is sitting open, and it's Puppies for Sale, and she decides to read it, and it turns around her life. Her name is Susan Crowder. I've got permission to tell it. She decided to suck it in, tough it out. She now has 3 kids, a lovely husband, but she now feeds 40,000 people a day. And she said to my partner, Jack Canfield, and myself, said, "Is it okay that I use the Chicken Soup for the Soul food kitchens because I feed 40,000 people a day, and I didn't know that you had a trademark that was so intrinsically valuable?" I said, "Heck yeah, I didn't know." But the point is, one story can re-vector somebody's life to where they want to go. The California Women's Conference I've talked at before, we're going to re-vector 20,000 plus, mostly women. There'll be a few men there, myself included, and Stedman Graham, a good friend, and all that. But we're here to uplift, and everybody needs to get bathed in the awareness.
It should be pointed out, mostly women, but also almost exclusively Californians. Californians can use a little inspiration these days.
Our whole state needs to get turned around at every level.
Absolutely. Well, if you're not familiar with Mark's books, if you've never seen him speak, you might have picked up already that he is kind of an inspirational kind of guy. And I guess, Michelle, that kind of goes to what the whole message, what you hope folks take away from this conference, that they leave with a little giddy up in their step, right?
Absolutely. And Mark you've done phenomenal work.
You had no better sense in loving a book called?
Well, it was the
Power
of Focus. In fact, and I was asking you earlier today, because that was one of the books I read 10 years ago, and it just had a lot of little helpful tips and very inspirational, very encouraging. And I love the book that you've done for Chicken Soup for the Soul for Women.
Oh.
Amazing stories, phenomenal stories.
Can I do one of those stories?
Absolutely.
We have a great story about a woman that it's pre-civil rights. It's 1957, I think, or 55, and her car breaks down, and it's a Corvette, and it's pouring rain, and she's down in Alabama in the South, which is not a good place for a black woman to break down in a car. And so she is hitchhiking and drenched, and her whole spirit is going down into the drain at the moment, because she says, "Oh my God, my husband's dying in a hospital. I'm never going to get to him, and nobody's willing to pick me up because I'm black, and they're all white drivers." Suddenly another guy comes over, pulls over, picks her up, a nice young white guy, drives her to the hospital, and she says, "Before I get out, would you just be so kind as give me your name, address?" And he does, and he hands it to her, never thinking he's going to get anything. The next day the doorbell rings, and remember, this is the front end of television. A big box television is there, and he said, whoa, I didn't order that. What are you doing?" He said, "No, it is a gift." He said, I honestly don't have enough money for a television. I'm not a rich man. I just can't. Back then televisions were like $7,000 each. I know, hard for us to believe now with flat screens and everything, but said, "I think you ought to read the note." And the note said, "Last night my whole spirit was going down the drain.
Oh.
All I wanted to do is see my husband one last time before he died in the hospital. I wanted to look in his eyes one more time. I wanted to hold his hand one more time. I wanted our 2 hearts to embrace one more time. and I wanted to kiss him one last time, which I did because you got me to the hospital before he died.
Wow.
Signed Mrs. Nat King Cole. Didn't that give you goosebumps?
Well, when we post this, I'm going to have Unforgettable coming up in the background.
Unforgettable.
That's a great story.
That's a
now,
great
also
story.
you.
Well, that's what we do. We are in the business of great stories, and all the publishers said, well, they're just little stories. I said, no, they're not. They're heart-touching, soul-penetrating, and they cause instantaneous behavioral change.
Making the rest of your life the best of your life. That's another one of your books, your mantras. How do you do it?
Well, that book is written with somebody that, unless you're over 45, you don't know it, and that's Art Linkletter. And Art Linkletter,
Which is why, in looking at all your dossier, he's a Art Linkletter.
An icon.
Absolutely.
Art Linkletter
Recently.
used to have 3 TV shows a day, and he walked from one to the other, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and nobody could do that.
Now
ever
Ryan
again.
Seacrest does that.
Yeah, right. Well, not quite as much. And the beautiful thing about Art is that he had kids say the darndest things, and he
Right.
says to all these little kids, like 5 years old, well, what's your favorite animal? And all of them want to be a dog or a cat or a lion. Kid says, I want to be an octopus. He says, why would you want to be that? He says, I'm little and they beat me up on Monday. I'm going to go back and beat them up with my testicles. And he never got bleeped because the kid did it innocently.
Yeah.
He never, and Art Linkletter
It was
was,
pre-digital world. It wouldn't live forever, right?
well, Art Linkletter was our ambassador to Australia. And when he's out in the outback, he sees these guys taking little sticks and putting them together and making a hoop. Except instead of rolling a hoop like I grew up with as a kid, and this came out thanks to him, they put it on their waist, and he came back with hula hoop, made $2 billion with hula hoop, sold it to Whammo ultimately. But you know, he was willing to see stuff that nobody else saw, and he tried to get everything working. And so, you know, he and I have been traveling around speaking to each of us separately and together once in a while, gigantic audiences, which I love doing. And you know, his daughter took too much drugs and did head first, and then our friend Norman Vince Peale said, you got to go out and speak against drugs. And so he and I became friends, and I said, let's do a book together. And he said, well, I've done a lot of best-selling books. And we did it, and that was a rockin' bestseller because, you know, we've got an aging group, and we'd have like 10,000 people at a time, and all the women, like we didn't even walk in New York before we did 30 media hits in 3 days, which is impossible. Like we were on Neil Cavuto's show, and we went straight. O'Reilly comes on and says, you guys got to be on my show. And go, oh, okay, cool. You know, we weren't even paying for it, but we'd walk down the street and women had come up because they grew up watching him every day on TV. Like my mother loved Art Linkletter, and she wasn't alive to see that he and I were best friends and worked together. And then my wife's husband, you know, owned all the Kentucky Fried Chicken in Mexico with Art, so he's amazing.
You're going to have a lot of people there who are, the economy is the theme, who are in business for themselves, who might be what they call these days accidental entrepreneurs. They didn't expect to get in business for themselves. Michelle, you've gone through this. You have a very successful business. You wouldn't have been tapped or volunteered to put together such a conference like this. What was the hardest thing about, and you were in business for years, but working for a big national firm and recruiting, I believe. What was the hardest thing about striking out on your own? What's the message that then you want to give to these people in your audience in a couple months who might be struggling?
You know, I think what's great about this conference is that it pulls like-minded individuals together. It does exactly what Mark was talking about with Chicken Soup for the Soul, is you hear these stories and you think, you know what, I'm not by myself. You know, I can do this. And, you know, gosh, I'm hearing this story about somebody who, you know, was really in a bad situation and they persevered. So I think, Pete, probably the biggest thing for me personally is it's perseverance. It's being able to stay on track. We all have that fear that, you know, creeps up. It doesn't matter how successful you are or where you're at, you know, every so often that will come up, and to be able to place it where it should be and to keep it in perspective and make it little. And, you know, okay, I recognize that fear, but put it where it needs to be. And then you move on and you push through, because especially with businesses, I mean, you could be right at that point, and it's like, if you could just go over, you know, and really go over that point, that's when the success really happens. And people so often, they stop short of that.
Well, Mark, the first publisher you brought Chicken Soup to the Soul for bought it, right?
144.
144 said, actually, because my partner's Jack, they actually said, he's on around the road, Jack. And I said, it's okay if you don't like him, but I'm a nice guy. No, Jack's a
How do
great
you get
guy.
told no 144 times? I mean, that's
I didn't know there were 144 publishers.
Oh, today there's 16,000. You got publishers like Monolith
Self-published,
and stuff you've never heard of. that do billions of dollars. I mean, this is thanks to digital press and desktop publishing, and I can name all the stuff, but because this is my industry, the world has changed, and now it's electronic, and Amazon's the biggest bookstore in the world. Thank God.
Well, Mark is one sample, and I know you mentioned a couple other people, but you got some surprises planned, stuff that maybe folks won't know until they go to the conference?
You know what, we absolutely do. I mean, that's what's so great about this conference is just really tying in that star-studded, that Hollywood scene. The actual evening of Sunday, September 23rd, is our night out on the town. So we've got the whole red carpet, set up, but we've got some amazing celebrities coming in, some amazing singers. We've got Melissa Manchester coming. We talked about Helen Reddy, coming. We've also got Symphonique, who is, the big, star right now, the teen star. We've got an entire street that's set up. We've got 2 Disney stars coming. So really, this is an opportunity for, moms, bring your daughters, dads, bring your daughters. But this is a great opportunity to have that messaging go out to our girls and to really hit that market.
The internet site, the website, will get you to all the rest of the information. It's CaliforniaWomen'sConference.com. The person who has brought it back is CEO of Event Complete. The California Women's Conference is Michelle Patterson. And to my left, Mark Victor Hansen, just one of the folks that you can be treated to if you attend. Guys are welcome as well, remember, at the Long Beach Convention Center on September 23rd and 24th. And you've already established dates for the next one, so we know it's back to stay, right, Michelle?
October 2nd through the 4th in 2013. So we're already working. We've actually been booking talent already for 2013.
Quite an undertaking. We wish you the best. You're off to obviously a great start.
I look forward to seeing you.
We will be there. We'll be there with the camera.
Exactly.
Michelle Patterson, Mark Victor Hansen, the California Women's Conference, as I mentioned, the 23rd and 24th of September. Thank you very much for watching the Chapman Business Report, a production of my former student, alum Jeff Cole, class of 2001, and his terrific crew for putting on the show. And we'll see you again next week. I'm Pete Weitzner.
Funding for this program was provided by Chapman University.